This show is about spoilers and discussion. It's also about spooky things that are best enjoyed after you see the movie. So any movie we talk about, we recommend you go see. You've been warned.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
Horror. There is no shortage of monsters to haunt our dreams. Horror.
You got red on you.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Horror.
Alive, it's alive!
Groovy.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Oh the Horror, a podcast where we take a look at classic and modern horror films from an expert and a newcomer's perspective. I'm the expert Rob Holmes.
And I'm the newcomer, Steve Allman.
And today, we are taking a look at the 2014 horror film Starry Eyes, directed by Kevin Kolsch and Dennis Widmyer.
Yep, these guys have got Pet Cemetary in the can, and we are going to take a look at their directorial debut, I'm assuming.
No, not directorial debut. It seems like they've done some other stuff together. This was one of those movies that I had heard a lot about. Everyone kept saying, you gotta see Starry Eyes, and there was a lot of hype. I feel like the movie got a little too overhyped for me, that I never took the time to see it until I found out these guys were directing Pet Cemetery, and I thought, you know what, I'll see it. And I was not disappointed at all. I was actually pleasantly surprised.
Based on what you've seen so far, do you have some faith that these guys could turn out a decent Pet Cemetery remake?
Yeah, absolutely. After seeing this, no doubt. No doubt. This movie, the thing about Starry Eyes is that it doesn't really pull any punches. When you think it's going to just be very basic and simplistic in its kills, trite in its kills, it just goes that extra little bit.
I wouldn't say an extra little bit. I say it goes an extra lot of bit. I'll get to that in a minute. I'll say this. This movie's a big old bummer, man. In a I guess positive way, but I just got really depressed seeing this character kind of fall from grace in a very sad way to me.
It's an interesting thing because it's trying to show how fake everybody is in Hollywood with each other. Everybody's trying to succeed, everyone's backstabbing, but they're all still friends hanging out. But are they actually friends, or are they just doing this because they need to survive? You know, you got to be around fellow people who are doing the same thing. And that's kind of the way that Sarah is in this film.
Right. And
that's how she...
It's very much an allegory for the trappings of fame and the deception that can come with success and fame and Hollywood and all that stuff, and the moral being don't let that get you down, and fame can be toxic and fame can destroy you. The pursuit of fame can change you into something that you don't want to be, and that's a very that's a tried and true metaphor. I have seen it in many films before with similar effect. And I think this movie does a few. I'm trying to be as generous as I can without sounding too diminishing, but I feel like this movie kind of does only a few things new and interesting with that idea, and then it turns into a very interesting and technically masterful horror kill fest at the end, which I was like, oh wow, this is the fun part now.
I think everything about this movie, as far as the her audition stuff that she goes to and how it's very drab and everything's just very plain and it's these buildings. Dude, I've gone to places like that when I was auditioning for stuff where it's you're going into these buildings that look, I mean, they're huge. They're it's these giant warehouse type buildings. There's a couple over in Ravenswood where they have the collective stuff over there now, where they have all the art stuff. It used to be more just this open corridor areas in that warehouse that you could just walk through, and then you would find occasional rooms that casting directors would have, and it's but everybody there was very it was the same thing. The tension's high. It's kind of miserable. Nobody's really happy. It's like,
you got to get this job done, and all these people got to see all of these other people. It seems interesting.
This is Chicago. This is in there. We're talking L.A. In L.A., it's more cutthroat. Every single person is there trying to make it, and they're going to everything that they can, and they're just trying to survive. Like the fact that she has that job, and I love Pat Healy's character as her boss in this. Pat
Right,
Healy's
it's
awesome.
a very I like the sort of off-brand Hooters. That's like it's just based on potatoes, which is it's just funny.
That's why this movie has so much going for it, because of just stuff like that, like the conversations, the dialogue, the way that I feel like these characters are real people. Even when some of them are being, the way some of them even talk to each other in these moments, it's like, this is kind of like the girl who keeps saying all these underhanded things to her,
like these backhanded compliments and like things like, oh, you'd be great for that, and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, it was just a commercial.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy was sleazy anyway. It's that's the cool part about this movie, is that it doesn't feel like two separate films, how a lot of those are, where it's like, okay, we've gone from, like in Hostel, we've gone from one thing to something extremely jarring that doesn't necessarily seem like it matches up. In this, I feel like it matches up better, because you're already living in this world where it seems kind of miserable and there's a lot of desperation to begin with.
Right. And because it's perfectly, that's what LA is, and anybody would do anything for that shot at success, or the things that you came out here for, the things that you thought that you were promised. And again, like the title says, this starry-eyed, kind of very naive girl comes in and wants to do anything for that audition. And
dude, but that decision she has to make, the weight that it has on her, and how it eats at her, and it's so horrifying to think, like, holy shit, it means that much to you that you're willing to go back and do a casting couch situation. Like, you're totally going to do that.
It's really tough to see. And like, not even in the sense that like this is clearly a Satan cult that's recruiting her, but like also in the real world aspect of like that, this has most definitely happened.
Well, it's the way that they get her in with the audition. So she goes in to do this audition. She's very, very excited. It's called The Silver Scream. It's by a company, Astraeus Pictures, and apparently they used to be on top making amazing films. Everyone who was with them was a star, and then, the past few years, I guess, haven't worked out so well for them, but they're making a comeback. So she goes out to this audition. There's an assistant and a casting director. And the assistant is just so callous to her, and
she's
awesome.
So mean and like just.
Well, the thing he says to her, he's so brutal to her, and then the casting director is still very mean and stern, but like the way they work together is awesome, because she does her audition. She's like, I'm gonna try something new, and they're like, you can go. And so she has this breakdown in the bathroom, and the casting director hears it, or whatever, and then wants her to come back in and recreate it, where she literally like gets upset, puts her hands into her hair, grips down, and rips chunks of her hair out, and you can hear it tear from the scalp, and it's very brutal sounding.
It's very unsettling, and I really didn't like it. It was unsettling, I think, in a good way, because like it very much made me feel like uncomfortable.
Well, the fact that she then recreated that moment and then some. The way that she was on the floor looked like she was possessed, man. It was you could even see like in the assistant's face, he's just this look of shock that he has not even had nothing has fazed him up until this moment at all that anyone has done. And you just see this look in his eyes of what the. It was a cool moment. And so that there's something going on there, and she gets invited out to meet with the producer. And I I'm like, man, is this going to be a sexual thing where they try and, yep. I'm hoping that it goes somewhere different, for once. I'm like, can this go somewhere where it's not going to be a casting couch situation? Nope. Nope. Apparently it cannot go.
That made me very uncomfortable and, like, upset to see.
Yeah, so then she leaves when he tries to feel her up. She's like, what the hell? No, I'm not doing this, and leaves. But then because she quit her job and everything too, and she thinks she made this mistake and she should go back. She, asks and gets her job back and everything. That's kind of a funny moment with the way he is in that, Pat Healy in that moment with her.
Yeah.
Like banter back and forth about family and everything. It's ridiculous. But even after all of this, she has this support system of her friends and even her boss, who is legitimately being really nice. Granted, he's kind of a creep.
He is a creep, for sure.
He's a creep sometimes, but at the same time, when he's talking to her, even when they're alone, one-on-one, he never crosses any weird lines with her.
He levels with her in a very, like, kind of real way where you're like, listen, like, I know you're trying to chase the dream. A lot of people are out here, and I get that this is your stopgap to pay the bills, but, like, you gotta respect me and what I'm doing here.
Exactly.
I thought, wow, that's like really real. Like,
there's some really good moments in this film. Like the dialogue, I really think it's well written. I like the pacing a lot in this. It seems like it's strangely paced, but by the time it ramps up heavily. Because really we're going through, with Sarah from the beginning, and we're following her just throughout all of this. And I actually like the way that it looks in the beginning before we find out that she has a cell phone. The movie starts with a title card, making it look like it came out of the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, it's very much going for like a Stranger Things synth vibe as well, which I'm assuming might have been a prevalent
this was before
aesthetic
Stranger
at the time.
Things. This was 2014, so probably filmed 2013. By the way, this was only filmed in like 18 days or something like that. Very short production time. The way that it starts is just cool like that because it seems like it's going to be a film that takes place then, but then it goes kind of modern in its look from there. Everything kind of modernizes, but still has a little bit of a classic look to it. There's this good mix between, and she decides that she's going to go back and blow the guy. I mean, I guess that's the best way to put it. Like,
she's all hopped up on drugs and stuff, and like she'll just be, like, she just kind of like got herself in the space where you're like, all right, this is what I got to do.
Yeah, she got really messed up to go out there and do it, and then the weird part is you just see her back at her house,
not fully remembering what happened, but like we could all assume we knew what happened.
And she looks like she had already gotten a full-blown case of herpes. Like, that guy, it looks like it literally jumped off of him and onto her. You know what I mean?
Not even that. I think it's more of like it looks like she's slowly turning to be more on drugs. Like,
she looks more strung out. She's definitely going through these changes. It's absolutely awful. She essentially starts to just fall apart. I mean, she's losing her hair. Chunks of her scalp are coming out. Her lips are all cracked up, and she looks absolutely terrible. She wakes up and she's I guess she's at her period during this time, and she's bleeding everywhere. And it's just, like, the whole thing is just vicious and nasty, man. Like, it's very, but this happens after time, but then she's out, like, she goes to sleep at one point, but then wakes up, and it's just insane. Like, the whole thing.
Like, and it's really, like, it gets me very uncomfortable seeing these sorts of turns characters make when like it's purely because of their naivety. It purely is because of them wanting the right things for themselves and not having the wherewithal to know that something's dangerous for them. That really gets me like churned the wrong way. And just to see her just deteriorate into something that she hates and
very
good.
Quickly too,
very
because
quickly.
Like she has this, she sees herself becoming this star, right? She has that vision or whatever, even though she's starting to deteriorate and she's looking like shit. She gets sick in the bathroom. Her nails are pulling her nails out, and then, you know, she vomits up like maggots and all this stuff, and she's picking them out of her teeth. And it's like, it's absolutely just disgusting. She looks just gross. Then, like, she talks to, I guess, either the producer guy or the assistant, and they're like, you can either die or embrace the transformation.
Yeah.
So she decides she's going to go over to her friend's place and murder them.
And that's the thing, like, we don't really know the specifics of this transformation or what it is, or like, I thought this was a Rosemary's Baby situation. I thought this was like,
it got so batshit crazy at this moment. I guess embrace the transformation. Maybe we didn't hear the whole conversation. Maybe it went on for. Maybe it was just ingrained into her from whatever
from
they
her
did
dreams
to her.
or her intuition or something like that.
Right. And plus, there's also that thing of she never really, as she said, she never really liked any of them. She never really had any friends. They were just there. And it was all shallow because a lot of the stuff there is, it's, you know, what can you do? What can that one person do for you? And that's kind of what Noah Segan's character is making a movie. And, you know, all these people want to be in the film. And Sarah's like, well, I'll be in your movie if I can be the star. Well, then her friend, you know, she sees that she's sleeping with him, so she is like, oh, you know, they have this confrontation, and she's in the kitchen, but Aaron can't see her. Her friend Aaron can't see her at all, like, because she's in the dark and it's a silhouette, and she's just like talking shit to her, and it's finally she turns on the light and she sees what's going on with Sarah. And
she's getting like decrepit and her hair's
she looks
out.
She looks absolutely awful, and she, you know, she's like, you have to go to the hospital. Like, she, you know, then you actually see these people kind of do care. Like, they're not just going to be like they're not going to be like, oh, but in Sarah's mind, Sarah's lost she has lost touch with reality completely, because obviously she went back to this producer to do all of this after she had left the first time, because she thinks this is going to be her moment for fame. That knife, when she whips that across, I loved the way they did the blocking on there, where you could see where her arm was in the knife, but you couldn't see Aaron's, like, you couldn't see like what had happened.
Oh yeah, no, it was a very
away.
Again, the second that this movie gets like viscerally violent, it gets very creative and it shows its chops very well. That cut was incredibly good because like it does that weird thing where like it doesn't the cut doesn't open fully until like she moved her cheek a bit, and then
here's what I was expecting. I was expecting the original thing to be a throat slice. That always happens. And
right,
everything,
you always
it's
think
a
that's
throat slice. Nope, it's a cheek slice, and when it does open, it bleeds heavily, and it's not. It is just thick. And then you can tell it's flowing into her mouth because she's spitting some up and choking on it.
Right. It's really like gnarly, but like a really good effect, because I was like, oh god, like that's good, but that's so gross.
They're having she's bleeding out, and Sarah like just goes and stabs her like repeatedly, just goes into her, and then proceeds to grab a large. As one of the guys sees,
that couldn't have been more than like a 10-pound weight.
Yeah, but well, no, that was like that was like a 20-pound weight that she had in her hand. That was not a 10-pounder. That was, and so basically before that, one of the guys walks out of the bathroom, sees her with the hoodie on the non-bloody side because she has blood covered on one side, not on the other. He sees her and is like, hey, and goes into the bathroom. She sees the weight on the floor, goes in there, goes into her friend's room while she's sleeping, has the weight above her, holding it above her head until her friend wakes up, and then smashes it into her head again and again and again.
I'm gonna tell you this, like I've seen a lot of like skull smashing like done in the pursuit of this podcast through the movies. This might be the craziest skull smash I have ever seen in any movie.
This is a really visceral, violent skull smash, mainly for the fact that it doesn't. Because at times I don't know if the whole thing.
It was because
I don't know if the whole thing's paced or if it's caved in or if it's how it's broken apart. But it looks so.
It looks unlike anything that I had ever seen before with this type of effect. And I tell you why that they were so confident in it. They keep cutting back to it. It's not that like you almost see the full range of motion for the entire effect. And I don't know how they did this because like you see the stages of it getting worse and worse and worse. And I think there are only like a few cuts away to it for them to like possibly change it. The effect is incredible because like,
I mean, it could have been done. It could have been done through, you know, it's definitely some digital editing in there to do it. Either way, you know, it looks good. It looks damn
that was like
good.
Honestly, it was kind of worth the entire film to see that effect.
That moment is one of the nastiest kills I've seen in a film in a long time, just because of there are movies that have done other stuff with head smashes that are kind of crazy. First thing I think of is like the Hatchet films with some face smashes. This is like insane. I also think of movies like Irreversible with the
head explosion, or even this most recent Halloween where he just like stomps the guy's head in.
Yeah. That, you know, and that's insane. Like with the Irreversible and the fire extinguisher hits over and over and over, and it's visceral and insane and watching something cave in like that. But this was just grim and messy and just disgusting. Because when you're watching it hit, you can see. Like, I see her eye at one point just rip to the side, and you can kind of see it. And it's,
right. And, like, we're going into very graphic detail because this is in graphic detail.
This
and, like,
is
I don't understand
graphic.
how they pulled this off. Like, I want to see all of those prosthetics. I want to see that behind the scenes of this effect because it's so good looking.
And then she ends up just stabbing the other guy, like, repeatedly, I think, in the back, right? She just keeps going at him and just obliterates him. It's crazy. And then she goes out to Danny's van and just sits out there, which I like Danny. I like his van idea that he has where it's like, yeah, man, why am I going to spend $1,500 on an apartment per month
when I'm gonna be in my car half the day anyway?
Yeah, and it's like his mobile office with his van and everything in there, and it looks cool. Like he's got it decked out very well. Like
I mean, if you're gonna live in a van, you may as well deck out a van.
Well, yeah, of course. But yeah, she sits with him and then just right in the gut.
Yeah, no, it's a rough one. And then we have, like, we didn't even talk about the occult get up with those really cool looking masks with like the black dye on the eyes.
Oh yeah.
It looks cool. It's a very cool looking like cult thing where like the masks are usually like I either see like, oh, you have like the ironic like animal thing, or it's like just like an eyes wide shut scenario. But no, this is just like ironclad, like black faced with a chiseled jaw and nose, and then it's just the eyes.
Now,
I was like, oh, this is cool.
Now that she's killed these people, it gets really interesting because the Astraeus people, as he dies, they appear in the yard to take her. And you're like, wait, so they've just been there watching this? Okay, this is really cool. So it's not just she's done this and it's some shadow organization you never see. No, they're always watching, apparently. And they've been worshipping Astraeus. And they do this ritual with her, and it's like they bury her. And she's in this membrane thing in the beginning, and you see her because they've like, it's just very strange. She's in this membrane thing. They bury her. She comes out of that being buried. The sun, I think, is coming up at that point. She is bald now. She looks flawless. She looks perfect. She's just pristine as she's walking through. She walks like through LA naked, and I'm like, how would someone get away? And I'm like, it's LA, of course. And then she goes in to her apartment, and then she has a moment with her roommate. That her roommate like finds, sees the muddy footprints and then sees her and talks to her, and then Sarah talks to her about that time that they like, I guess, kissed each other or something, and then Sarah kills her, and then just sucks the life or whatever the hell she does, and a lot of blood, and then she puts on the gown, the wig, and the silver pentagram necklace. And then because her eyes when she sees her, when Tracy sees her, emerald green, but they almost look like scales in her eyes the first time she sees her, and then they're this glowing green. And when you see her decked out in that wig and everything, she looks like a classic film star. Like,
it's quite elegant. Like it's kind of amazing.
It really is. It's so cool. Like this movie really worked well. Like by the end of it, I'm extremely satisfied by the end of the film.
No, and here's my thing. I think by the end of it, it seems a bit lackluster for what it kind of came with, because I think it's paced very slowly. Come the middle of the second act, and then that's when things really start to get a little heavy. I think it's when we finally realize we get into a bit more of the actual classic horror elements of, like her decaying in a weird way, pulling off the fingernails, her going crazy and killing all of her friends. That's when things start to be escalated, because up until that point, it had sort of been like not so much a tired metaphor, but like, you can see these beats coming. You can see where a lot of these moments can take place. Although a lot of them earnest and very well planned out. I really did like quite a few character interactions.
Yeah, well, she has to go through.
You can see where this is going from kind of a mile away, and then
you can, but she has to go through that whole audition process, which does take a decent amount of time. There's always something going on with the audition. Forgot to talk about the second audition, which that was really weird, and I think that was almost the Rosemary's Baby type moment.
Right, where like it's this weird fugue state that she's put in. It's just like,
and she goes into this like sex. Yeah, she has like a sex state where it almost seems like something is happening. Something is totally happening during that, when she's in this trance and they do the lights at first, and then they ask her to strip naked, and she's like, okay. First she's apprehensive about it, but then she's like, you know what, I'll do it. And she should know where this is going eventually. You know what I mean? And then, yeah, she just totally gets into this weird sexual euphoria as they do the lights flashing on it. And it's very, very strange. And then she's like, she seemed totally cool with everything when she left. It didn't seem weird to her at all. Then that there's something up, which kind of, her leaving the first time for the third place, I guess makes sense because she's still her, but there's still that thing lingering. And I think that could have been from when she was during that second audition, on part of why she went back, like an influence from that. But this, man, I think it's a really good movie. And honestly, if Pet Cemetery is anything like this, we know it's not going to pull any punches, and hopefully it puts these guys into the public eye, because I was pleasantly surprised by Starry Eyes.
No, and I will say this. I will undoubtedly admit that these guys have quite a bit of talent when it comes to putting together some cool effects and tense situations. And I think if they have like studio backing and a big creative team at their backs with a lot of this, I think they can churn out something really, really cool. I think that this effort came from them on a partially funded Kickstarter budget, and a lot of good gumption and a lot of good ways to manage time and expectations and script and everything. It's a solid effort for sure.
I think it's an extremely well made. I think it's extremely well made, great effects, little indie horror film. It has that fantasy elements to it, very dark fantasy. It's, it's kind of like Lucky McKee when he made May, It has that kind of little twist, oomph ending. But I feel that Starry Eyes was more, I think it works better as a movie. I actually really think Starry Eyes is the better, even though I'm saying they're not exactly alike. I see that there's similarities between the two. Other people might not. But Starry Eyes is kind of like a better version of what they're able to do with it, about taking that person and watching them change over time and go through this evolution. I think everybody needs to see this movie. Especially for some of the visceral stuff that goes on in it. It is very intense. very, very violent. It's not too funny. It has humorous moments, but it's not playing stuff for laughs. It never gets super cheesy. That's one thing I can't stand with a lot of these is when they get the super cheesy moments. They don't, man. When they go for it, they're trying to mess with you. They really want to. These directors want you to be unsettled.
Oh, for sure. And I think I would recommend it if you wanted to see a good, solid effort from these guys coming into the dawn of their now major studio career and making a good name for themselves. I would say go see it.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we are going to be talking about Pet Cemetary.
Perfect transition.
Also directed by these guys.
Heck yeah.
So, yeah, we'll kind of see. This will be a good way to kind of see what, how we feel about them as directors since doing that. And I know that they directed something from Holidays, which I've seen Holidays, and I think they directed the Valentine's Day part for Holidays.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe it wasn't Valentine's Day, but it was one of the shorts for it. Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
So,
well, we look forward to that.
Pretty
as
much
well.
what they did in between. So, yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is going to do it for us this week. Why don't you let us know where we can be found on the internet, Rob?
We are on ohthehorrorcast.com. You can also find our podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. So like Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, any of those places. And we are on, the Instagrams and the Facebooks at ohthehorrorcast. Yeah. So search for us at ohthehorrorcast or ohthehorror.
Yes, thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate the support, the reviews, the messages that you've been sending us. We really appreciate it, and we really like to hear from you guys. So thanks again, and until next time, I'm Steve Allman.
And I'm Rob Holmes.
And we'll see you next time.
Look at me, Damien. It's all for you.
Come, it is time to keep your appointment with the Wicker Man.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk here.